There is an urgent nighttime evacuation effort on in Grand County tonight. This is the East Troublesome Fire blowing up this afternoon and churning eastward as night fell, prompting a mandatory evacuation of everyone in the town of Grand Lake.
Several large wildfires are burning across Colorado right now. Firefighters have only made progress building containment on one of them, the Trail Canyon fire in southwest Colorado. The rest, though, are still growing fast.
Not just Grand Lake, but Hot Sulphur Springs, and then homes just west of Granby.
26 houses have burned. More than 3,500 people remain away from their homes as the threat of wind gusts overnight keep evacuations in place.
The reason behind the increased number of wildfires in Colorado have to do with multiple things. One of them is obviously climate change. The fact that we're getting to summers now that are drier, warmer. There's also have to do with forestry issues, perhaps, forests with high density and human encroachment that result in some of the ignition events that we then have to deal with.
We have hotter summers that drag in longer to the fall season. And even though the trend is showing that we get wetter springs and drier fall seasons, the amount of wind and the amount of dry vegetation is driving these not only more intense wildfires, but they're more frequent all around the state.
The biggest thing, the big picture reason for the fires increasing has been the drought that we've been in for the last 20 years or so. One of the worst droughts, based on some estimates, in the last 1,200 years.
Nearly one half of the country, from the Pacific coast to the Great Plains and the upper Midwest, is experiencing moderate to exceptional drought conditions.
Across the American West, there simply isn't enough water to go around, and the full heat of summer is just getting started. From the Rio Grande to the Rocky Mountains, a mega drought is underway.
Part of it is increasing temperatures. We think that maybe half of the drought impacts are caused by high temperatures, and the other half are part of what we call natural variability.
In terms of having bigger fires, more intense fires, longer fire seasons, really the underlying climate drivers are, I would say, the biggest influence.
When you have a wildfire event, it creates a lot more sedimentation. So you get a lot more ash deposits on top of the soil.
When a fire occurs, it typically happens in the same forest that we use as sources of potable water. And a wildfire will impact the slopes, which will then impact mobilization of turbidity sediments, and that will impact production of potable water.
It's becoming more and more difficult to innovate new treatment processes to remove this turbidity, to remove these toxic heavy metals and anthropogenic chemicals from the water sources that we drink from.
Here in Denver, more than 50% of the drinking water comes from the snow runoff in the mountains. Now, as this water makes its way down, the forest serves as a natural filtration system. And here's the headline: wildfires put those systems at risk and can contaminate your drinking water. Denver watershed scientist Christina Burry says when those forests are turned to ash, the charred mess left behind can ultimately end up in our water supply.
All of the sediment and the ash would drain to the streams and then the reservoirs and then to our treatment plant.
Okay, so maybe it's already a drought. Water supplies are short. Now there's a fire, and the water that does come down the stream is low quality. So what do? Do you try to pay a lot of money to treat that water? Do you let it go by? It's a kind of a big deal.
The business as usual scenario in Colorado, if we don't limit our emissions, if we don't curb the effects of climate change, in Colorado we're going to see exacerbated fires, not only in terms of their frequency, but we're also going to see an increase in the intensity of them, meaning they're going to just explode in size and get larger and larger and threaten more towns, more wild habitat, and it's going to basically destroy a lot of the forest land that we have in this state.
This week, the monstrous East Troublesome Fire exploded, at one point racing at a rate of nearly 80 football fields per minute.
Oh my God.
Forcing the evacuations of thousands, fast becoming the second largest fire in Colorado history, now at nearly 190,000 acres, proving deadly.
On behalf of Grand County, to the Hilleman family, I'm extremely sorry for your loss.
There's a lot of different proposals that have been made to combat wildfires and more on a macro scale, just the overarching climate change issues that are causing these wildfires to become more intense and more frequent.
There are certain things, we can try to work with forest managers and other stakeholders in doing prescribed burning, try to reduce fuel so that when a fire actually occurs, it's not as intense as it could have been.
For instance, you could do things like you could take a system wherein you have like genetically modified algae or trees, like with enhanced root systems that sequester more carbon than they usually would and safely store it in the lithosphere or the geosphere.
We're on this together, right? When something happens in California that can have impacts in the air quality here, we need to look into better understanding the impacts of that contamination. We need to look out for the people that are sensitive to those events and work with them to make sure that we minimize potential impacts to the population.
So I think there's a lot of things we can do in terms of our personal behaviors, our community behaviors, as well as land management that would at least help us control some of what's going on.
Am I optimistic about the future? I wouldn't be in my degree if I wasn't, right? Like, you still have to have some sort of belief in humanity and the fact that we are going to solve these problems that we've created.
We humans, we're pretty smart and we're pretty resourceful, so I'm pretty optimistic that we can solve any problem if we decide it's important to solve.
I always like to be optimistic. We're a very smart and innovative culture, right? Like, we're an amazing country, and I think we can and will be doing things to help us mitigate some of the issues and adapt to them.
Yeah, I'd say if there's one thing people should know is that this whole system, the wilderness that we have with the fires, with water, it's all connected. And so our actions really do matter. It's really just to think about, especially when you're out in the beautiful mountains, think about your actions, ways you can minimize your impact on the environment.
What do you love about this planet? What makes you feel like Earth is your home? Because, someday there will not be the Earth that you see if we don't act now. It's a privilege to live on this planet, and it's a privilege to be a human being, and we have a responsibility to all the other forms of life on this planet to protect and to preserve. And so I would just ask people to think about what they love and to act based on that.